And good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for joining the NetSuite Agri webinar today. My name is Anthony Najafian, and I'll be taking you through the session today. I'm also joined by my colleague Gavin Niels, who'll be taking us through the NetSuite demonstration, as well as Nick Davis, the Global IT Manager at NewSeed, who's our special guest today. So I wanted to thank you all for joining, and we'll go into a little bit today around what we'll be covering off. So today I'll go through a little bit around Fusion 5 and NetSuite, just a bit of an overview and background. Following that, we'll jump into a bit of a Q&A with Nick from NewSeed, following which we can then have Gavin jump in for a bit of a demonstration on NetSuite for agribusiness. And if we do get time, we can also address a few queries and comments either throughout the session or towards the end, just depending on how we go with things. Just a bit of a recap on some of the topics we'll be covering off today. Now, you would have seen these when you first registered, so we will be touching on these throughout the session today, either via our Q&A or with the demo with Gavin as well. So thanks all. So firstly, a bit of an overview around Fusion 5 as an organisation. So Fusion 5 have been around now for about 20 years, focusing on best of breed business applications, innovation and integration, as well as managed services. So we do have about 600 employees across 9 ANZ locations in all major cities, servicing about 1,000 clients across our different pillars. I like to think we've got a good blend of both experience, maturity, as well as personal one-on-one dedication, which we bring to the table. So moving on, a bit around our pillar structure at Fusion 5. So NetSuite does actually fall into the ERP pillar along with a number of other ERP products. And we're also complemented by a range of different applications that most businesses need throughout their lifetime, with the idea that you've got one port of call, one point of contact and one methodology. To the bottom left, you can also see the integration that's been highlighted there as well, and that runs horizontally across all our different pillars. And we do often work with integration teams, especially when clients have specialized applications that they wish to use or retain, for their project. So it's quite common for us to also work with our integration team. So I guess the message we're trying to say is that we're not just a vendor, but a long-term business technology partner, which is what we bring to the table. So a few stats and facts around our NetSuite practice and what makes us different. So all in all, we are actually the largest NetSuite practice in the Asia Pacific region, with 75 dedicated staff and over 220 deployments. We, as I did mention, have presence across all 9 major cities across ANZ. So we do have boots on the ground. Often throughout our projects, we do like to bring in subject matter experts and specialists from corporate performance management, process improvement, and others as well. And there is definitely a strong support model that we bring to the table once clients are actually live and up and running. And that works alongside with NetSuite support as well. Our consultants do have quite a lot of experience in agri, and we often bring best practice recommendations as well as in-house IP to our projects as well. And we've definitely been recognised both as Partner of the Year, NetSuite Partner and Support Partner of Excellence. So you are definitely in good hands there. We do foster great relationships with Oracle, so we ensure that we get the most possible commercial outcomes for our clients, as well as access to the roadmap. And finally, we do also provide a number of methodology options for all types of commercial expectations, whether it's standard agile and a few other options as well. So I've included here just a little bit of a cross section of some of the brands that we work with in the market, ranging from agri, manufacturing, wholesale, and others as well. But it sort of gives you an idea of who we work with. Typically about 50% of our clients come to us via word of mouth, either via our partners or via our clients as well. So we're all about those long-term relationships with our clients. Moving on to NetSuite. So NetSuite are a truly global company. They were purchased by Oracle in 2016. And what we're looking at these days is a lot of, I guess, industry specialization in the editions that NetSuite provides. So you do get all that international contribution into distinct specific editions with a lot of leading practices that are built in to make sure that you have a fast time to value. One thing with our Suite Success Editions at NetSuite is that you are globally ready. You're able to pretty much access any country with localizations for every country across the globe. That also refers to when you're adding additional entities, business units, business models. There's typically minimal implementation involved, which essentially allows you to have fast time to value and to capitalize on opportunities a lot faster as well. Finally, with our Suite Success Editions, as I mentioned earlier, Suite Success Editions are all about pre-configuring leading practices. These are both products as well as a methodology as well. So Fusion 5 does use the methodology as part of our practice, and we do complement it with our own rigor and control as well to ensure you are getting fast time to value. Now, speaking with clients, a lot of our clients do mention that they do have these type of challenges, especially in the agri industry. And we do spend a lot of time with clients, and often this is what we hear in terms of what's happening and what's sort of prompting change internally. So obviously this is not an exhaustive list, but it does give you an idea of the type of challenges and issues that we work with. And often NetSuite's functionality is able to support these challenges via a bunch of different features and functionality which we provide for the agri industry. These that you see on the screen are definitely some of the features that you will see in NetSuite that are available, but the whole idea is essentially that we're going through a bit of a process to ensure that we're nullifying any of these, I guess, these major challenges that come up. So hopefully that does give you a bit of an idea on the type of things that we do work with. As you can expect with NetSuite as well, you do have seamless upgrades. These occur twice per year, and typically you've got about 200 enhancement requests that are added per release. These come both from NetSuite's thought leadership as well as from user feedback as well per industry. What's important to note is there is no customer or partner involvement throughout these processes. So it's quite seamless and occurs in the background as well. And all clients, as you can see there, are actually on the same version. So everyone's on sync. Similarly, when it comes to security and compliance, you do get enterprise level access, which really ensures that, that you've got complete coverage with data that's also hosted in Sydney and Melbourne. So with the technology and the infrastructure in place, you don't often have to worry about things like infrastructure, backups, upgrades, all those sort of things are all done for you in the background as part of the NetSuite offering, which is quite great. So we may take this opportunity now to introduce Nick from Newseed, who's our special guest today. Welcome, Nick, and thanks for joining us. Hope you're well.
Yeah. Hey, great. Thanks for having me.
No worries at all. Look, really appreciate your time today. So I thought before we do get into a bit of Q&A, Nick, might ask you to give a bit of an overview around yourself, a bit of background and experience. That would be awesome if you could.
Sure. So myself personally, I got my undergrad degree in electrical engineering. I started off the first part of my career in the automotive business. I went back and got my MBA in finance and shifted gears to a financial analyst, a little bit of IT, and mostly business intelligence. I did that for a handful of years, and I came across a position where we were actually selling an embedded product into NetSuite that did some business intelligence reporting, thinking pivot tools or pivot tables.
Yes.
And so my background with writing different SQL queries and basically data cubes in general, that got me exposure to a wide variety of businesses and industries, and that's where I first learned to cut my teeth in the NetSuite ecosystem. I've been working in NetSuite for probably about a little over 4 years, and I've
Oh,
been
wow.
with NewSeed for 3.5 years. Um, a little bit about NewSeed. We've been on the on the NetSuite platform for not quite 6 years just yet, and we have approximately 250 employees across the globe. We operate in over 30 different countries. Um, we're primarily kind of segmented into four major regions. So we have North American operations, South American operations, European operations. Specifically, we're in the seed business. So one of our primary legacy products is sunflowers. So as folks on the call would be aware of, the Ukraine-Russia market for sunflowers is the biggest in the world. So
Mm.
that's a big center of our operations. And then we also have operations down in Australia. NewSeed is wholly owned by our parent company, New Farm. So they're kind of a much bigger animal. So we have an odd relationship, or at least a unique relationship between our parent company, the types of functions and services they provide, versus the types of services myself and my team take advantage of. So typical things, HR, onboarding, stuff like that, that usually gets taken care of them. Consolidation reporting, that is also taken care of by our parent company, where we wholly run and support our ERP systems as well as the associated tech stack that we have. Off the top of my head, if anyone's interested, so from tech products we use, obviously NetSuite, we use Jitterbit, Tactical Connect, Soligo, Salesforce, Concur. We have our proprietary inventory management platform, SMP. So a while ago, we had built that out. We're on Gen 2 right now, but for the last 6 years, Fusion 5 has been our primary integration partner. And that relationship has been good for us in the sense that I can leverage an ecosystem of third-party experts where I have a very small team. There's only 5 of us on my group that support 250 employees globally. So we can't ever be masters of some specific domain, which is why we engage with folks like Fusion 5. Primary crops that we deal with are sunflowers, as I mentioned, canola, sorghum. We have 2 new product pipelines, one that we call the omega-3 business, which is a modified version of canola products that ultimately this product has a very high omega-3 fatty acid content in it. So one of these days, you're going to go into a grocery store and you can buy a salmon steak that we were feeding the salmon with our oil, and it's heart healthy. We have a new product called Carinata, which is not just a cover crop, but it's also a product that you can be used as a feedstock for biofuel, and it's got a very greenhouse gas friendly carbon footprint. So that's kind of quickly about myself and the company. I guess I'll leave it there unless anyone has questions.
That's really good, Nick. I think that's a great background that you provided. I can tell definitely your products will be continue to be in demand with where we are in the world at the moment. So thanks so much for giving us that info. Tell us a little bit, Nick, around I guess some of the challenges that led you to our shores, that led you to looking at NetSuite from a global perspective. I know obviously that you guys would have had multiple non-integrated systems, but if you could give us a bit of commentary around that and on what sort of led to that, that'd be great.
Yeah. So classic story, multiple non-integrated systems, maybe somewhere on-prem, et cetera. As our business continues to grow, I don't know if I mentioned this, but we're anticipating about a 60% growth in headcount over the next 3 years. And our ability to scale up new businesses, train people, have existing standardized processes across these different regions. Really, a cloud-based product is the only way to go, in my opinion. Coupled with the muscle that exists from Oracle/NetSuite, like you mentioned before, making timely updates, kind of a well-vetted product, as well as the ecosystem, both of vendors that will sell into that NetSuite universe, as well as partners such as yourself. So for us, it was an easy choice to make the switch. And now, with the benefit of hindsight, looking back 5 or 6 years, it's an investment that's returned many times over for us, and we're not going anywhere anytime soon.
Understood. No, and that's really great info as well, Nick. I understand that you guys were also looking for, I guess, more automated processes, more standardization across the organization. Is there anywhere where NetSuite sort of helps you with that angle, if you could comment?
Sure. So NetSuite out of the box has a lot of classic business processes, whether an approval workflow mechanism, as an example, that really can be super highly customized, not only for us kind of globally, but also regionally specific. So, for example, if anyone here has experience in South America, LATAM, they've got very highly complex tax codes and such. We need something that's globally standard for us, but at the same time can incorporate the different regional needs. So even though we come at the process of a global standard at a high level, we can still accommodate for different regional needs that are specific to our business, whether it's governmental or the types of products that we offer in that region. And the fact that we do have a common platform across the globe, and now we've had a relationship with our network of partner firms that understand our business. It's not just simply me, requesting a functionality to be implemented. I can have a conversation with these partners. They understand our business, and then we can work together to figure out how to stitch something together that will work for all of our regions. And that makes it easier for me and my team because, I can go and I can train in Australia just as easy as I can go and train in Europe. And I know the way it's supposed to work out of the box. And that's really important because I don't consider myself to be a NetSuite expert by any means. And NetSuite is a very large piece of software or a platform. So for me to be able to know enough to where to look, but then to rely on our partners at Fusion 5 as an example to have that subject matter expertise is really important because it allows me to spend more of my time focusing on the business, not writing code.
Got you. No, that's I'm glad you said that. That's really good, Nick. And sort of leads me to my next question. Moving back towards when the evaluation was occurring, I mean, how do you feel sort of NetSuite fits in relation to some of the other more expensive enterprise level applications out there in the market? And what really sort of led to NetSuite would be a good question.
Sure. So while I was not on board during our implementation, I've got plenty of war stories from my predecessor, and I can kind of certainly see the historical artifacts in our NetSuite instance and appreciate what has taken place. For us, really, it's a total cost of ownership type of solution. It's not the license fee. It's the fact that, again, I can get a network of folks just like a Fusion 5, whereas if I had to run an on-prem solution, for example, I'd have to go hire at least 1 or 2, infrastructure engineers whose whole job would be maintaining, patching, keeping servers spun up on time. My team and my organization is still too small to where that would almost be a luxury that we couldn't necessarily afford. And so for us to be able to kind of take this out of the box, know it's going to work, and the fact that I can keep a smaller staff, again, while still treating my third-party implementation partners ongoing service level contracts, really that's an extension of my staff for me. So from a total cost of ownership standpoint, getting rid of the on-prem stuff, having to teach, document, coach, map processes from one system to another.
Yes,
there was really no other choice.
I see, and that's a really really great summary, Nick. Thanks for mentioning that. Now, flash forward to today. If you could give us a bit of a an overview of your experience with the changeover onto NetSuite. Any teething problems, both good and bad, and if there's any learnings that you can provide our audience as well based on your experience and time using NetSuite, that would be
Yep.
awesome.
So the experience that I've had, and I guess we'll kind of put this in. It can be there can be a steep learning curve in getting yourself up to speed with NetSuite, how to do things, how to access it, how to understand the data model as well. So, I would consider myself to be largely self-taught up to this point, and the best way that I've gotten in there is jump in the sandbox, start poking around and understanding it. NetSuite is different in that, I'll use Salesforce as an example. You can go on YouTube and start Googling and probably get a very high level of competency on Salesforce for pennies on the dollar by watching wonderful YouTube videos. It doesn't really exist in the NetSuite world. That's where, relying on third-party partners again, and then the different vendors out there to show you has accelerated our learning curve. I know for myself and for my staff, the training of your staff, and not necessarily just, hey, the accountants said they want to do it this way. You really have to kind of work in tandem, both from like an IT supply chain and a finance group to define the way that things actually should work and really get in there and say why. A lot of times it's been my experience. People say, well, this is the way it was at the last place. And they don't really take a comprehensive, fresh sheet of paper approach to how we might want to do things in the future. So I would say the training of the staff is of paramount importance. 100% get an implementation partner. I cannot stress this enough. I read the NetSuite subreddit every day on my phone for at least a couple hours, and that's the number one horror story that you always hear is Johnny was good in Excel. He used to be our guru in QuickBooks or whatever it was, and he just say, "Oh, I can save a couple bucks on the implementation. You do it." And it's a really bad move because there are messes you can unknowingly make for yourself out of the gates that are very hard to clean up later on down the road. So taking the time to map this out, to have consultation with the experts is, it's of paramount importance. And then on top of that, make sure that you're constantly training your staff. There are so many things out there that, at least problems that I have engaged with all the time, that really comes down to staff training issues. And you really have to create that institutional knowledge on best practice. This is how you do it.
Gotcha.
I guess my last little tidbit would be learn how to write a save search and how to take advantage of the CSV import engine. They are your best friends. They are the greatest levers for productivity that I've seen, and that's where I spend most of the time teaching my staff.
Absolutely, you've definitely emphasized the importance of that and the training aspect as well. And yeah, we at Fusion 5 we take that pretty seriously. We really want to make sure we give organizations the skill set to be able to continue and manage their own instance as well, even when that includes future configuration work, so you can actually, where possible, reduce costs as well. But Nick, I can't thank you enough. What you've explained is quite good. All these little pearls of wisdom, sharing your struggles and your insights, I think have been quite good. No, much appreciated for your time, Nick. That's lovely.
Sure. Great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having us. So we
Nick,
might.
I had a question from one of our registrants. They were interested in having a brief opinion about why having multiple systems is good or bad, and what challenges you've faced with those.
Yeah. So multiple systems in and of itself, I would argue, is maybe not bad, right? So we rely on Salesforce for our CRM platform. NetSuite also has that capability in there. I won't necessarily make a comment on which one is better or which one is perhaps more tightly integrated between the two platforms. But I will say, from a standardization perspective, NetSuite is the hub of our tech stack ecosystem. So it's not necessarily that I can't have multiple spokes connected to it, but that has to be the central repository. If you have to have multiple, let's call it overlapping, disparate systems, it's extremely difficult to keep data in sync between those systems to do simple things, such as managing intercompany recharges, as an example. So for us, multiple on-prem solutions was not an option. It's really just a bad design paradigm, in my estimation, moving forward. And there really has to be a good reason. Now, one of the ones that I would argue was the toughest decision for us, and again, I'm going to go back to South America, is that yes, we work with probably the two biggest partners in South America, Latam Ready and then Avalara, to kind of meet all those regional specific tax issues. Some of the feedback that I've gotten, though, is that, hey, our old ERP system that was on-prem down in South America may have tackled some of those issues better, but we decided that the trade-off between just having a common globalized platform versus constantly trying to make sure that a process that we might create or refine in NetSuite matches up to a process that we create on like a local ERP system. That's a very difficult thing to manage. As I mentioned before, we are a small wholly owned subsidiary with respect to our larger subsidiary, and the amount of work that we have to do, the amount of interfaces that I have to maintain just to be able to, for example, consolidate our financials into theirs is one of the biggest manpower time uses. So if that's just me kind of naively providing that information so that they can, kind of put that into their regulatory filings, the amount of effort and work that would be involved having to manage multiple disparate, potentially overlapping systems, it would actually, sink my ship in no time fast. I'd have to double or triple my staff.
Yeah. One of the things that we're all experiencing in the world right now, and I suppose you guys as well, is around inventory management and forecasting and ordering and the disruptions to the global supply chain. How has using NetSuite influenced the way you tackle that?
Sure. So I would argue that supply and demand planning and forecasting is the next high priority project for us, where in the past we've kind of leveraged a little bit of ad hoc Excel modeling and then injecting into the budget and forecast record inside of NetSuite. And if you're doing it well, if you're a good data modeler and you are kind of constructing your budget forecasting, supply and demand planning, that can work for you. It's very laborious. The next phase that we're looking to do is some combination of either buying a third-party tool that has a lot of the UI, the logic built into it that makes it better, easier, faster, and ultimately gets people out of Excel spreadsheets as far as constructing your forecasting, your budgets. And then for us, because we have a proprietary platform for managing our inventory at the lot level as well as our own QA information, that's really the challenge that we're going to be trying to tackle coming soon, is how do I bump up my supply side data with my demand side data and then really make that a less time consuming project for us. So we've probably spent 2 really solid months every year to kind of get those budgets up to speed and then track along through that. And we think we can probably at least cut that down by half, if not more, when we get to a little bit more mature tool and process. but historically that's been a little bit of a soft spot for us.
That's very valuable, Nick. Thanks for sharing that. I think yeah, definitely that makes sense. Janine, were there any other questions from the audience before we move on to the demonstration phase?
No, I think I'll leave those for the end. Thanks.
Oh, perfect. Nick, appreciative of your time again, and thanks for your comments. It's definitely definitely very helpful. That's awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you. So moving on now, we'll introduce Gavin, our solution architect, who'll be taking us through NetSuite today. And we'll certainly take any other questions towards the end of the session as well, just to make sure we cover them off. Welcome, Gavin. Thanks for joining and helping today.
No, pleasure, and thank you, Nick, for the insight. Also, the audience for the questions. I think that it's really great to have that interaction. I'll turn my camera off for the presentation so we can focus on the product. But as a basic sort of preamble, I think looking at the agriculture industry is very broad. You know, we go from livestock, grains and seeds, primary industries, and resources, and many, many more. So it's almost a sub-vertical approach. What we look to do is leverage leading practice within NetSuite. Each of our sub-verticals and customer needs can be quite different based on the vertical or the customer ecosystem. And I think Nick touched on this really nicely around, and the question prompted it, many systems versus one. So NetSuite is quite elastic in its ability to fit within your requirements and your needs, whether we're a core finance system that connects to all the different spokes, or whether or not we need to look at wholesale distribution, moving goods in and out, whether or not those goods need to be manufactured, whether that be a breakdown of a particular product into multiple or build up. And then also things like services resource planning. So if you think of the people management projects, research, development, all of those critical aspects of the agriculture industry in its broad, in the broad sense. It's also, again, as Nick mentioned, and to rehash what he said, NetSuite's very global, but it also has a very focused need on regional requirements. So it has quite an elastic capability to work with you. Some of the customers we've worked with in the past have incubation, hatching, growing, all the way through to processing. It could be planting, germination, and sprouting. It could be sourcing and sustainability in more of a distribution or manufacturing lens. So there's many different ways we can look at NetSuite and how it fits to your requirements. And sort of speaking to those spokes, the technical landscape across agriculture is really interesting. When you think of livestock and farm management, paddocks, crop rotations for grains and planting, soil analysis, irrigations, fertilizers, how things like AI and robotic automation come into play and automate some of those things, greenhouses, lighting, locations, warehousing. It's really, really, for me, fun and interesting industry to be a part of because there's so much going on. And it's really moved along over the last few years, particularly with agri-tech as well. So the technology that supports all of the industry. So with that preamble out of the way, I think we'll move to the next slide, Anthony.
Yep, perfect.
And what I'd like to cover off today is really an introduction to NetSuite. We've only got a limited amount of time, and I wanted to touch on a couple of key things that I think are really important. Traceability. Okay, the ability to transact, but also trace and track and audit where things have come in or gone out, whether that's because of a recall, potentially analysis that's been done around soil contamination, any type of visibility you need. So it's all about visibility and traceability. The second piece that Nick highlighted was forecasting, particularly in the world of COVID we now live in. We've all seen what I like to think of as the toilet paper scenario. You know, people sometimes think you go into the supermarket and everyone's just doing panic buying, but there's the whole supply chain sitting behind that impacts the ability to get the toilet paper into the supermarket. That's about lead times, availability, freight, all the real core supply chain processes that get to that endpoint. And we'll wrap up with a bit of financial consolidation and reporting. So once we've been through all these processes, what does month end look like and how do we analyze the business? So I'm going to turn my camera off and I'll take control, Anthony.
No worries.
And please do continue to ask questions. So this is NetSuite's dashboard. So NetSuite is real time. If we're part of a core system with spokes, we can take feeds from different information. But the first piece I want to touch on is, well, how do we manage inventory and traceability? It's great having a dashboard where I can see reminders, I can see inventory movement. As changes happen, I can see the changes in my dashboard, so it's all real time. I can receive notifications. I can really use NetSuite as a proactive ERP system. But what I'm interested in is how we manage traceability. And it all starts with setup. So for this particular example, we're an agribusiness and we grow and sell turf. Sir Walter Buffalo is the product. There's a number of different characteristics for Sir Walter. Drought resistance. Is it a wet or dry area that we're selling this into? And this could be for any of your customers, so it facilitates a really good interaction. Is it robust? Does it take a lot of wear? Is it in an area of high shade or high sunlight? And how does that impact how I manage this item? And is it maintenance? I'm pretty busy, and I'm sure we all are on the call. Is this a type of product that requires high or low maintenance? And how does that impact how you manage it? NetSuite also has units of measure. So this allows you to sell wholesale or potentially retail. Is it by meter squared or is it by a larger unit type? This is also lot traced. So we can manage this by lot number. So if you think of track and traceability in food services and potentially livestock, you want to be able to lot manage things. Another great thing about NetSuite when you view the inventory record is you can see in real time how much you have on hand at each of your different locations. And these locations could be farms or paddocks or external growers. They could be 3PLs. So there's a number of different ways you can slice that information. This could also be herd information. So while this is focused on turf, there's any number of different ways we can create characteristics for the products you sell. So in terms of traceability, there's a couple of things I also want to touch on that tie back into some of the other areas. So we have pricing in here. So you've got your pricing matrix as well as your currencies. We saw the locations. And I've also got my inventory detail. So I can see traceability down to a particular lot. Within the lot, I can see the locations, the on-hand availability and stock as well. Knowing that this has potentially been shipped out to a number of different customers, NetSuite has the ability to track and trace. So if there has been a customer inquiry, potentially through the website or directly through customer service, I can go through and start to run a traceability report. So I can change roles. I can go into my reports and I can do a quick lot trace. Because there's a concern with a particular product, we know it's from a single business. We want to look at outbound transactions against Sir Walter. And the customer recorded that it was a particular lot that was purchased. We can submit that. And what this does is it shows every single transaction within NetSuite where this particular product tying back to a lot was shipped out. And this allows us as a business to mitigate exposure or risk, also ensure that customers are notified and aware of potential concerns. So we can start to contact these customers as well. I do also have the ability, if I need to, look at inbound and outbound transactions or any others. Within NetSuite, you can also drill down. Okay, so you do have the ability to open up these underlying transactions should you need to. So that's just a taste of traceability within NetSuite. The second piece is around forecast accuracy, particularly with the changes businesses now experiencing with COVID. So with my role, I want to change over to a purchasing manager. My dashboard has a different lens. It's pre-configured, and the lens is really geared to goods movement and procurement and vendor management. And vendor management, as we all know, is just as important for the back office as customer relationship management is for the front office. So we have demand planning. This allows me to calculate item demand plans, and off the back of that, generate item supply plans and give me a forecast. The item demand plans are fairly configurable, and we have a number of different methodologies we can apply. So linear regression will look at trending, moving averages, sales forecast if you're really interested in what contracts and sales forecasts you have in place, and then seasonal averages, and where you've got fluctuation based on seasonality. You can project forward, and you can also determine how far back you want to look, and then you can go ahead and start to select the products you'd like to forecast for. Once we've generated our demand, we then generate a supply plan. And the result of that is demand forecast versus actual reporting. And this gives us a view into the accuracy of our forecast. This is a NetSuite report. We're looking at the next forward-looking quarter, but I've got the ability to very quickly change what lens I cast across this forecast report. It is multi-entity, so we are looking at a single business. And rather than the total across the quarter, I can also look at breaking this out by week, for example. Okay, so this starts to give me a more accurate forecast, and I can see the forecast quantity here is 2, but the actual quantity in the forward order is 28. So it allows me to very quickly make decisions to repivot and adjust my forecast, my procurement cycle, and interact with my supply chain vendors. For a more granular view per product, we can also look at a gross requirements inquiry. So we saw fertilizer was there, and when I look at fertilizer, this shows me what demand forecast is looking at in terms of the underlying transactions. So it shows me a quantity on hand, current quantity on hand, and then the fluctuation based on forecasted demand. So we're decrementing inventory, and you can see the result on the right. And then we have planned purchase orders based on the supply plans to increment inventory to meet ongoing demand. Okay? The great thing is we can reforecast, replan, and readjust. And then the last piece I wanted to touch on today was what does this look like? We're obviously rolling into the end of the fiscal year for a lot of people. What do the results look like? And NetSuite can use dashboards to drive forward-looking actions, but we also need to be able to look back at financial results. So I've logged in as the Chief Financial Officer. I've got all of my key performance indicators. I can see revenue. Revenue is driven from the P&L. From my dashboard, I can drill down and I can see the income statement. And it's nice to see it from June to June. It's consolidated across the group. But I may actually have a question in terms of how well our business is performing in terms of the different revenue streams or classes. It's a diversified agribusiness. So there's fertilizers, grain, livestock, and turf. And I can start seeing a matrix view how the business is performing across each of the different revenue lines at a consolidated level. So Anthony, I'll wrap it up there and pass it back to yourself.
Thanks, Gavin. That's been great. We'll now maybe move to a few more questions if there are there. Was there anything there, Janine, from the audience that we can address amongst ourselves?
No, I don't think so.
Awesome, great. Well, if there are any others that come through, we can definitely address and publish them out along with the video. But in saying that, everybody, thank you very much for your time today. Hopefully that has been helpful. It's given you a bit of a taste on what NetSuite looks like for the agri industry. We've certainly enjoyed your time and look forward to our next webinar next month as well. So in saying that, thanks everybody and have a great day. It's been lovely having you.